I never thought a simple knock on the door could be the start of a secret I'd carry in my chest like a hot coal. That night was cold, one of those early spring evenings when the rain taps on the windows and the house feels too quiet. My husband Dave was out on another overnight shift. I'd gotten used to those absences, but that didn't mean I liked them. I just poured myself some tea when the knock came. It was Jake, the neighbor's son. I'd known him since he was barely tall enough to ride his bike to the corner. Now he was 31, recently moved back in with his parents after a messy breakup, and still had that easy grin that made people forget what they were doing mid-sentence. He held up an empty glass, laughing sheepishly. "Sorry, this is random, but Mom started making a cake and realized we're out of milk. Can I borrow some?" I could have just handed it to him, waved, and closed the door. That's what should have happened, but instead I invited him in. We stood in the kitchen while I poured from the carton. He leaned against the counter, telling me about his job hunt, the bad coffee at his parents' place, the way the rain made him want to stay up all night listening to old records. I laughed more than I had in weeks. It wasn't that my marriage was unhappy. Dave is a good man, but somewhere along the way, we'd stopped making each other feel seen. With Jake, every glance felt like he was noticing me. When I handed him the milk, our fingers brushed. Just skin on skin for half a second. But something shifted. I saw it in his eyes, that flicker of awareness. Over the next few weeks, Jake found more reasons to stop by. Sometimes it was to return a borrowed tool. Sometimes to bring over muffins his mom baked too many of. Sometimes it was just because he was in the neighborhood. I started anticipating it, checking my reflection before answering the door, telling myself it was harmless. The first time we crossed the line, it wasn't anything anyone else could point to and say, "That's wrong." It was just him sitting beside me on the couch, the rain drumming on the roof again, our knees touching. We talked for hours about nothing and everything, until the silence between us started to hum. He looked at me the way someone does when they re-remembering a dream they don't know what to wake from. I broke it by standing up and saying I needed to check on the laundry, but it was already too late in my heart. One afternoon, I was making coffee when I saw him through the kitchen window, mowing his parents' lawn shirtless. I caught myself staring, and when he looked up and waved, I flushed like a teenager. That night, I dreamed about him. I woke feeling both guilty and electric, as if I'd been keeping a spark hidden in my pocket all along. It all came to a head on a Saturday when Dave was working. Jake brought over a bottle of wine his friend had given him. "I don't want to drink alone," he said with that grin. We sat on my back porch, talking as the sun dipped low. The air was warm and heavy. At one point, he reached over to brush a strand of hair from my face. I didn't move. Our faces were so close, I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. He didn't kiss me, but the world tilted like we'd just stepped onto a different path and couldn't turn back. After that, I avoided him for a while. I told myself I was protecting my marriage. But the truth was, I was protecting us, this fragile, secret connection that lived in the space between what was allowed and what was wanted. The last time we spoke alone was late summer. He stopped by with a half-gallon of milk, returning, in his words, the one I stole months ago. We both laughed, but it wasn't carefree anymore. We stood in the doorway, neither stepping closer nor away. I could feel everything we hadn't done hanging between us like unspoken words. Then he said quietly, "I think if I stay here another minute, I'll regret it." I swallowed hard. Me too. He left, and I watched him walk down the driveway. My heart ached in a way I couldn't explain, not just for him, but for the version of me that had come alive in those moments. Dave never knew. Or maybe he did, and that way people can sense the small earthquakes in their own home. Our marriage went on. I still see Jake sometimes waving from across the street, both of us pretending nothing happened. But every time I pour a glass of milk, I think of that night and how a single knock on the door can change everything you thought you knew about yourself.